On March 24, 2015, a routine eviction at the Martin Luther King Apartments in Detroit takes a grim turn. Court officers step into Unit 804, a low-rent apartment saturated with clutter and an overpowering odor that permeates the small living space. Near the front door sits a large white chest freezer, locked with a heavy metallic padlock. Believing the appliance holds nothing but spoiled food left behind by a defaulting tenant, the bailiffs retrieve their tools and snap the lock. They lift the heavy lid and peer inside the frostcake chamber. Beneath a thick layer of ice, they uncover the frozen form of a teenage girl wrapped in a large plastic bag. The officers halt the eviction process, drop their clipboards, and rush outside into the cold air to dial the Detroit Police Department. This horrifying discovery sets in motion a sprawling investigation into a mother and a devastating years-long secret hidden in plain sight. The physical geography of the Martin Luther King Apartments features sprawling red brick buildings, connected by cracked concrete walkways and illuminated at night by the harsh glow of sodium streetlights. The complex sits nestled within an economically challenged but connected Detroit community. Neighbors know one another by name, sharing the burdens of inner-city life while sitting on metal folding chairs outside their ground-floor units. Inside Unit 804, Michelle Blair presents a crafted illusion of a struggling but functioning single mother holding her household together. She raises 4 children in the tight quarters, maintaining a quiet exterior that deflects close scrutiny from local authorities. Her ground-floor apartment sits just steps away from the communal courtyard where children gather to play until the streetlights flicker on. To outside observers, the Blair household blends into the neighborhood fabric. Michelle navigates the public welfare system, purchases groceries, and engages in casual passing conversations with the building management. No one walking past the peeling paint of her front door suspects the profound toxicity brewing within the walls. The community views her simply as a tough disciplinarian trying to keep her kids out of trouble on the streets. The true victims of this story are the children, specifically 13-year-old Stoney and 9-year-old Stephen, who possess vibrant spirits and boundless potential. Relatives describe Stephen as an energetic young boy with a wide smile who loves to run across the concrete courtyard and invent games with the neighborhood kids. Stoney stands out as a spirited teenager beginning to find her own voice, often showing fierce loyalty to her younger siblings. The children share a deep, protective bond, anchoring one another amid the chaotic environment of their home life. Michelle maintains volatile relationships with the children's fathers, Alexander Dorsey and Stephen Barry, using the kids as pawns in bitter domestic disputes. Despite the instability of their parents, Stoney and Stephen project warmth and resilience to everyone they meet. They attend local public schools, walk the familiar city blocks, and dream of futures far removed from the confines of Unit 804. Extended family members cherish the moments they spend with the children during holidays and occasional weekend visits. The fathers attempt to remain involved, but Michelle orchestrates constant interference to sever these familial ties. The outside world sees only the bright smiling faces of the siblings, unaware of the psychological torture they endure behind closed curtains. Before the deep freezer becomes an instrument of concealment, the daily routine inside the apartment functions on a strict regimen of fear and control. Michelle isolates the children from supportive adults, cutting off avenues of escape or intervention. The physical layout of Unit 804 traps the siblings in a confined space where their mother monitors their every move. A heavy metal security door guards the entrance, serving dual purposes, keeping the dangerous elements of the city out and trapping the vulnerable children inside. Inside the living room, a large white chest freezer hums in the corner, initially serving as a bulk storage unit for discounted groceries purchased with state assistance. The children walk past the humming machine every single day, unaware of the dark purpose it will eventually serve. Mitchell rules the household through physical intimidation, demanding absolute obedience and silence regarding her disciplinary methods. She forces the children to present a unified happy front whenever social workers or maintenance men enter the property. This calculated deception ensures the outside world perceives a normal family, masking the insidious reality of a predator hiding in plain sight. The children learn to navigate their mother's volatile moods, tiptoeing across the linoleum floors to avoid triggering her wrath. The descent into tragedy begins in August of the year 2012. 9-year-old Stephen vanishes from the view of neighbors, teachers, and extended family members without any formal explanation. When relatives ask about the boy, Mitchell Blair offers a rotating series of plausible excuses designed to shut down further inquiry. She claims the boy is staying with an aunt, visiting distant relatives in another city, or undergoing specialized behavioral treatment. Her tone remains confident and aggressive, shutting down any follow-up questions from concerned family members. The physical geography of the apartment complex aids her deception, as neighbors assume the boy simply moved to a different unit or spends his days inside watching television. A critical breakdown in the educational system occurs at the same time, as the public school district fails to flag Stephen's prolonged absence to child welfare agencies. State welfare programs continue depositing funds into Mitchell's accounts, lacking any cross-referencing system to verify the physical presence of the dependents. The bureaucratic machine accepts the paperwork at face value, prioritizing processed forms over the actual safety of the child. During this critical window, no active reports of a missing child enter the law enforcement databases, allowing the mystery to fester unchecked. Less than a year later, in May of the year 2013, the shadows deepen when 13-year-old Stoney also disappears from public life. The vibrant teenager stops walking through the courtyard, stops attending school, and ceases all communication with her friends. Alexander Dorsey and Stephen Barry make sporadic inquiries regarding their children, arriving at the Martin Luther King Apartments to demand answers. Mitchell responds with intense hostility, blocking the heavy wooden doorway and threatening the fathers with trespassing charges. She uses the strict trespassing protocols of the housing authority to her advantage, knowing management will remove unauthorized visitors who cause a disturbance. The fathers find themselves trapped in a bureaucratic nightmare, unable to push past the threshold without risking arrest by local patrol units. The surrounding community fails to notice the prolonged absence of the two middle children, assuming they simply transferred to different schools or went to live with their respective fathers. Child Protective Services receive 0 calls from neighbors, teachers, or relatives during this pivotal timeframe. Mitchell constructs an impenetrable fortress around Unit 804, isolating her 2 surviving children while concealing the grim fate of the others. The physical absence of Stephen and Stoney marks the definitive point of no return for the Blair family. Inside the cramped ground floor apartment, the surviving 17-year-old daughter and 8-year-old son witness a horrifying transformation of their living space. A devastating legal loophole allows Mitchell to maintain physical custody despite previous court motions filed by the fathers. Family court jurisdictions in Wayne County operate under massive case backlogs, meaning routine welfare checks attached to custody disputes often fall through the cracks of the system. The specific paperwork error involves unserved subpoenas and a lack of interagency communication between the family court judges and the local police precincts. Because the fathers cannot afford private legal counsel to enforce the custody orders, their petitions gather dust in a basement filing cabinet at the courthouse. Mitchell leverages this systemic apathy, knowing that without a formal judicial order, police officers will not force entry into her home based on vague concerns. The humming white chest freezer in the living room now stands locked with a heavy padlock, guarding a devastating secret right beside the front door. The surviving children endure immense psychological pressure, trapped in a silent nightmare while the outside world forgets their missing siblings. Inside Unit 804, the physical layout dictates the daily nightmare for the surviving 17-year-old daughter and 8-year-old son. The front door opens directly into a cramped living room covered in linoleum flooring. Barely 3 feet from the main entryway sits the large white chest freezer plugged into a wall outlet and secured with a heavy metal padlock. The continuous low hum of the compressor fills the small apartment, providing a constant auditory reminder of the horrific reality contained within the ice. The surviving siblings must walk past this appliance multiple times a day to access the kitchen or exit the residence. They carry the crushing psychological weight of knowing exactly what rests beneath the heavy lid. During the chaotic concealment of the second victim, Mitchell Blair inflicted unimaginable emotional torture upon her eldest daughter. She forced the terrified teenager to physically assist in lifting Stoney into the freezing chamber. The young girl had to place her sister directly on top of the frozen remains of her 9-year-old brother Stephen. Following this traumatic event, Mitchell conditions the remaining children through severe physical intimidation and constant surveillance. She prohibits them from speaking to neighbors, answering the front door, or using the telephone without explicit permission. The children exist in a state of perpetual dread, trapped in a highly controlled environment. The white freezer functions as a silent monument to their mother's absolute power over their lives. Throughout the autumn of 2013, a massive systemic failure unfolds within the state welfare apparatus. Mitchell Blair continues to interact with the Michigan Department of Human Services to maintain her financial lifeline. She logs into online portals and fills out mandatory recertification forms to receive state cash assistance and nutritional benefits. On every official document, she lists all 4 of her children as active, living dependents residing inside Unit 804. The bureaucratic system relies entirely on the honor system, lacking any mandatory in-person verification protocols for ongoing claims. Case workers process the digital paperwork from cubicles miles away, approving the financial disbursements without ever visiting the Martin Luther King apartments. A devastating legal loophole exists within the recertification process, requiring only a signature to verify household composition rather than visual confirmation of the children. Because Mitchell submits her renewal applications precisely on time, the automated system never flags her account for an investigative audit. State funds continue flowing into her bank account on the 1st of every month. She uses this exact money to pay the subsidized rent and purchase groceries, effectively using government resources to finance the very location concealing the missing children. No interagency communication exists between the public school district and the welfare office. The truant officers logging Stoney and Stephen as absent never share their data with the financial caseworkers authorizing the monthly payments. This rigid compartmentalization allows Mitchell to exploit the system without triggering a single official inquiry. During the winter of 2014, the fathers of the missing children encounter an impenetrable bureaucratic wall at the Wayne County Family Court. Alexander Dorsey and Stephen Barry navigate the complex judicial corridors, filing formal motions to establish visitation rights and demand welfare checks on their children. They submit their petitions to the friend of the court, the specific agency tasked with enforcing custody agreements and protecting the interests of dependents. The system requires physical service of process, meaning a court-appointed official or a private process server must hand the legal documents directly to Mitchell Blair. Process servers travel to the Martin Luther King apartments and knock on the heavy metal security door of Unit 804. Mitchell looks through the peephole, recognizes the officials, and refuses to turn the lock. She ignores the knocks, denies access, and outlasts the servers until they retreat to their vehicles. The strict protocols of civil family law prohibit court officers from forcing entry into a private residence to deliver custody paperwork without proof of service. The family court judges lack the authority to issue bench warrants or compel Mitchell to produce the children in a courtroom. The petitions enter a massive administrative backlog, gathering dust in the basement filing cabinets of the downtown courthouse. The fathers lack the financial resources to hire private investigators or aggressive legal counsel to push the issue further. The rigid adherence to procedural rules creates a complete dead end for the desperate fathers. The legal system effectively shields a predator behind the sanctity of a locked front door. As the heavy heat of the Detroit summer descends in 2014, the physical realities of the apartment begin to break down. The temperature inside the unair-conditioned ground floor unit rises significantly, placing immense strain on the aging mechanical components of the white chest freezer. The overworked compressor struggles to maintain a sub-zero environment against the stifling ambient heat of the living room. During a mechanical lapse, the internal temperature of the appliance rises just enough to initiate a partial thaw. A distinct, highly alarming odor begins to leak through the rubber seals of the freezer lid. The smell permeates the tight confines of Unit 804 and seeps out beneath the front door into the communal hallway. Neighbors standing in the narrow, poorly ventilated corridor detect the terrible scent lingering in the stagnant air. Several residents walk down the hall to the property management office to file formal complaints about the disturbing odor. The building management team reviews the grievances but dismisses them as routine maintenance issues common in aging housing complexes. They categorize the smell as a backed-up sewer pipe, a dead rodent in the wall cavity, or rotting household garbage left by a careless tenant. Maintenance workers inspect the exterior hallway but never breach the threshold of Mitchell Blair's apartment to investigate the source. The property managers close the complaint tickets, ignoring a crucial environmental red flag. Recognizing the profound vulnerability of her secret, Mitchell takes calculated steps to reinforce her deception. She leaves the apartment to purchase thick black contractor bags, plastic sheeting, and industrial adhesive tape from a local hardware store. Returning to Unit 804, she waits until the dead of night to execute her grim maintenance. She forces her surviving 17-year-old daughter and 8-year-old son into the back bedroom, ordering them to remain silent and face the wall. In the dim light of the living room, Mitchell unlocks the heavy padlock and lifts the lid of the struggling appliance. She wraps the victims in additional thick layers of heavy plastic, pulling the industrial tape tight to create an airtight seal. This physical process requires immense effort and demonstrates a chilling level of calculation designed solely to preserve her freedom. She reorganizes the contents, layering frozen food items over the heavy black bags to disguise the shapes beneath. Once the compressor stabilizes and the temperature drops back below freezing, she secures the heavy metal lock once again. The following morning, she reinforces her psychological grip on the surviving children, detailing the exact consequences they will face if they speak to anyone. She uses the heavy black bags as a direct warning, shattering their sense of safety. The children understand that the white freezer always has room for more, ensuring their total compliance through pure terror. Entering the early weeks of 2015, the carefully maintained facade begins to fracture over a completely unrelated administrative issue. Despite receiving consistent state welfare benefits, Mitchell Blair stops paying her portion of the subsidized rent to the Martin Luther King Apartments management. She diverts the funds elsewhere, allowing her financial obligations to the housing authority to fall into severe arrears. The property managers flag her account for delinquency, initiating the unyielding protocols of Wayne County eviction procedures. The bureaucratic machinery that failed to verify the physical safety of 4 children now mobilizes with ruthless efficiency to recover a financial debt. The housing office generates a formal 30-day notice to quit the premises, taping the document directly to the front door of Unit 804. Michelle ignores the warning, believing she can manipulate the property managers just as she manipulated the family court system. She fails to appear at the subsequent landlord-tenant hearing, resulting in an automatic default judgment against her. The presiding judge signs a formal writ of restitution, legally authorizing court bailiffs to seize the property and remove all contents. The stage is set for a forced entry, bypassing the civil protections that previously shielded the apartment. The white chest freezer continues its low hum in the corner of the living room, holding its grim secret as the final days of the deception tick away. On the morning of March 24, 2015, the calculated deception holding the Blair family secrets together collapses inside the Martin Luther King Apartments. The physical layout of the narrow, poorly ventilated hallway leading to Unit 804 echoes with the heavy footsteps of Wayne County Court officers arriving to execute the active writ of restitution. A crew of bailiffs approaches the heavy metal security door, carrying iron crowbars, clipboards, and heavy-duty trash bags required to clear the delinquent property. They turn the master key, breach the entryway, and step past the threshold onto the worn linoleum flooring of the apartment. The men find themselves instantly confronted by a thick, stagnant odor trapped within the unventilated walls of the cramped living room. Barely 3 feet from the front door, the large white chest freezer sits anchored in the corner, secured tight with a heavy metallic padlock. Believing the humming machine holds nothing more than spoiled meat left behind by the defaulting tenant, the officers retrieve their heavy tools to empty the appliance. A sharp metallic snap echoes through the small living space as a bailiff breaks the hasp and lifts the thick insulated lid. The men look down into the frigid chamber expecting to find discarded groceries, but instead notice a large mass concealed beneath a thick layer of crystalline frost. They pull back the top layer of frozen items and uncover the frozen form of a teenage girl wrapped tight in heavy black plastic bags. The eviction crew halts all physical labor, dropping their heavy tools onto the floor as the horrific reality of the scene sets in. The officers rush outside into the freezing spring air, dial the Detroit Police Department, and stand guard to secure the perimeter from wandering neighbors. Within minutes, Detroit homicide detectives and forensic crime scene investigators swarm the concrete courtyard, cordoning off the entire ground floor quadrant with yellow tape. The physical extraction of the evidence requires a team of specialized technicians to maneuver the heavy, locked appliance out of the living room and into a secure transport vehicle without disturbing the contents. The investigative trail moves from the sprawling apartment complex through the city streets directly to the sterile, brightly lit autopsy suites of the Wayne County Medical Examiner Office. Inside the climate-controlled medical facility, forensic pathologists initiate a slow, meticulous thawing process designed to preserve every single piece of delicate evidence bound within the ice. The medical experts spend several days working in the sterile environment, methodically peeling away the thick industrial adhesive tape and unwrapping the heavy black plastic layers. The subsequent autopsies yield forensic data that defies human comprehension and exposes the profound cruelty inflicted behind the closed doors of Unit 804. Pathologists determine that 9-year-old Stephen perished from multiple severe blunt force impacts, compounded by extensive thermal injuries inflicted with scalding water prior to his final breath. 13-year-old Stoney succumbed to fatal blunt force trauma directed at her head and torso during a separate disciplinary event occurring months after the loss of her brother. The forensic examination reveals a clear pattern of systematic, targeted physical abuse that escalated over time into the ultimate tragedy. Medical examiners catalog dozens of healed fractures and internal injuries, documenting a timeline of torture that spanned long before the children disappeared into the appliance. The undeniable physical evidence proves that the predator responsible for this devastation lived alongside the victims, eating and sleeping just feet away from their icy tomb. As the forensic teams process the grim reality inside the medical facility, field investigators launch a massive canvassing operation across the sprawling housing complex to locate the missing mother. Detectives knock on dozens of heavy metal security doors, questioning residents about the whereabouts of Michelle Blair. The manhunt concludes when a concerned neighbor from an adjacent building points patrol officers toward a neighboring unit just across the cracked concrete courtyard. Police officers ascend a short flight of stairs, knock on the door of the specified apartment, and find Michelle Blair sitting on a couch. She offers zero physical resistance and displays no visible emotion as uniformed officers secure her wrists in heavy steel handcuffs and transport her to the downtown precinct headquarters. Inside the sterile concrete interrogation room, the arrogant facade that fueled her secret unravels under the pressure of intense questioning by veteran homicide detectives. Displaying a profound sense of superiority, Blair admits to ending the lives of her two middle children, looking the investigators directly in the eyes. She attempts to justify her extreme actions by claiming the victims inflicted physical abuse upon their youngest sibling, an explosive and convenient allegation she never reported to any authority. Exhaustive follow-up investigations by specialized child protection detectives fail to uncover a single piece of corroborating evidence to substantiate this defensive strategy. Detectives recognize the accusation as a calculated manipulation tactic designed solely to cast herself as a righteous protector rather than a ruthless domestic predator. While the interrogation proceeds downtown, a secondary team of law enforcement officers executes a critical rescue mission back at the Martin Luther King apartments. Detectives locate the surviving 17-year-old daughter and 8-year-old son, removing them from the chaotic courtyard and shielding them from the flashing lights of the crime scene units. The siblings stand in a state of profound shock, wearing thin clothing, as officers wrap them in heavy blankets and escort them into unmarked police vehicles. For the first time in years, the children breathe air outside the suffocating control of their mother, leaving behind the ground floor unit that served as a daily house of horrors. State welfare officials arrive at the precinct to take emergency custody of the minors, placing them immediately into a protective, undisclosed care facility away from the media spotlight. During gentle preliminary interviews with trauma specialists, the surviving children describe the daily terror of walking past the white chest freezer to reach the kitchen. They detail the extreme physical intimidation tactics Michelle Blair utilized to ensure their absolute silence, painting a vivid picture of captivity occurring in plain sight of the entire neighborhood. The surrounding Detroit community recoils in absolute shock, realizing a brutal predator utilized the protective mask of a strict single mother to operate unchecked. Local residents gather outside the police tape, staring at the peeling paint of the front door and grappling with the guilt of ignoring the subtle environmental warnings. The successful rescue marks the definitive end of the active crime, closing the dark chapter of captivity and transferring the battle for accountability into the halls of justice. The legal aftermath of the grim discovery moves through the judicial system with swift precision, completely bypassing the typical drawn-out delays of the criminal courts. In June of the year 2015, the sprawling architecture of the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice becomes the stage for a highly unusual and chilling legal proceeding. Michelle Blair shocks the assembled judicial officials by stepping before the presiding judge and entering a direct guilty plea without securing any negotiated deal from state prosecutors. She formally accepts responsibility for 2 counts of the highest degree of criminal homicide, removing the necessity of a lengthy and agonizing public trial for the surviving family members. Standing at the wooden defense table, she displays an absolute lack of remorse, looking directly at the courtroom gallery with a steady, unwavering gaze. She informs the court that she felt absolutely nothing during the fatal beatings of Stephen and Stoney, describing the brutal acts with the casual detachment of a routine chore. Furthermore, she declares to the silent room that she would gladly accept the ultimate penalty if the state of Michigan still permitted capital punishment. She remains convinced of her own moral superiority, framing her fatal violence as a necessary form of household discipline rather than a calculated act of evil. The official legal record cements her status not as a victim of urban poverty, but as a manipulative predator who ruthlessly exploited her total control over isolated dependents. On a humid morning in July of the year 2015, the final gavel falls inside the Wayne County courtroom, delivering definitive moral justice. The presiding judge sentences Michelle Blair to a mandatory term of life in a maximum security state correctional facility, strictly stripping away any future possibility of parole. Heavy wooden doors swing open as armed bailiffs escort her out of the public eye in heavy steel chains, ensuring she will never again walk free to harm another vulnerable child, far removed from the sterile courthouse. The surviving 17-year-old daughter and 8-year-old son begin an extensive lifelong journey through dedicated psychological therapy. Medical professionals help the siblings process the immense trauma of enduring years of physical abuse and the heavy burden of guarding a nightmarish secret just inches from their front door. They learn to rebuild their identities in a safe environment, free from the daily threat of the humming appliance that dominated their formative years. The vibrant spirits of Stoney and Stephen remain a permanent fixture in the collective memory of the local residents, standing as a heartbreaking testament to the heavy cost of systemic apathy. The tragic outcome of the Blair household forces society to confront the uncomfortable reality that the most dangerous predators do not always lurk in the shadows of an alleyway. Sometimes the most profound evil operates in the open air, hiding behind a locked front door and the trusted title of a parent. The staggering details of the case send massive shock waves through the halls of the state legislature and local government agencies, demanding immediate administrative action. State lawmakers and child welfare directors launch intensive, top-to-bottom reviews of the exact systemic failures that allowed a predator to collect state benefits for missing children for years. Investigative committees scrutinize the glaring lack of communication between the public school district trucinant officers and the financial aid caseworkers operating within the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The devastating legal loophole that previously trapped concerned fathers behind rigid service of process rules becomes the focal point for judicial reform advocates across Wayne County. Lawmakers introduce new administrative protocols demanding strict physical welfare verifications for dependents, ensuring state funds cannot flow into a household without visual confirmation of the children. Caseworkers receive expanded authority to coordinate directly with local law enforcement to bypass the heavy metal security doors when red flags appear on a welfare account. The property management industry implements new training standards for maintenance workers, teaching staff to recognize the environmental warning signs of severe hoarding and unauthorized bulk storage. True moral justice arrives not just with the permanent incarceration of the perpetrator, but with the fundamental restructuring of the safety nets designed to protect the most vulnerable citizens. The legacy of Stephen and Stoney fuels a massive cultural shift in the Detroit community, transforming passive neighbors into vigilant protectors of the children playing in their courtyards.